Ordered a door panel set for my 1970 Rally 350 from First Place Auto Parts, and these are the pre-assembled door panels, meaning that they are ready to install. And ready to install, now they're not really ready to install, but they have the upper pieces on the front and rear panels, so you don't have to move your pieces over from your old panels. These are just ready to go. All you have to do is cut them to fit. PUI Interiors kind of has a reputation of being more of a budget interior, and after pricing out the door panels from PUI and Legendary, I can see why that is. And the PUI door panels were half the cost of the Legendary door panels. When I bought my car, it already had PUI seat covers on it, and so that was the reason I chose PUI door panels, so they would match. But really, you know, I think they're a decent door panel or a decent seat cover for a driver type car or a weekend car show car. I mean, obviously, if you want the highest quality, then you're going to go to Legendary. But, you know, if your car's not a show car, then I guess you'd have to think about whether or not it's worth the money. I ordered rear armrest covers when I ordered the door panels, and I bought a set of water shields from OPGI. I'll share with you the methods that I use to install the door panels. The first step is to set the panel in place and then adjust it front to back to where you want it. After that, I placed a piece of blue painter's tape on a piece of the weather stripping so I could use that as an index mark, where every time I set the door panel back on the door, I can put it in exactly the same position. Once I had the front to back position set, I needed a way to mark the panel for cutting holes for the window crank and the door lever, screws, and whatever. So what I did is I used some yellow acrylic paint to transfer the positions onto the door panel. You'll want to cut the holes for the window crank and the door handle first. Once those are cut, that allows you to lay the door panel flat against the door. Again, make sure you got your marks right, you got the door panel in place, because you don't want big old holes, you want accurate holes. I placed some yellow paint at the end of the window crank and door handle shafts. Then I set the panel in place, and careful not to smear the paint, and then carefully lower the panel down into position until it touches the shafts, and then the paint will transfer onto the back of the door panel. Once the holes are cut for the window crank and the door handle, it's time to move on to the door panel tabs. Ordered new door panel tabs, and I took two of the tabs and I bent them to use as fixtures for transferring the paint onto the panel. Compress the side barbs on the tab until you're able to insert the tab and remove it with your fingers. Insert the tabs on the highest receptacle on the front and back of the door, and then place a drop of paint on the back of the tab. Now set the door panel in place and press the door panel against the tab to transfer the paint onto the panel. Now cut a small hole where the mark is, just big enough to be able to slide the tab into the hole, and then push the tab forward. Now you're going to cut all the way through the cardboard, and you're going to go to the fabric, so be careful that you don't cut through the fabric. And after you have the first two holes cut, insert the tabs into your door panel, then fit your door panel and check your work. Remove the tabs from the door panel and repeat the process until you have holes for all the tabs cut. Then insert all the tabs and check fit it on your door. And after everything's been checked, go ahead and remove the tabs from the door panel again. I placed 4 screws in the bottom of the door where the lower 4 screws go through the door panel into the door. After transferring the paint onto the door panel, it was clear that my door panels were about a ½ inch shorter than the factory door panels, so I was going to have to drill new holes. I measured up from the bottom of the door panel so that when I put the screws in from the outside, that the head of the screws will be up above the piping on the bottom of the door. I then drilled the holes for the screws through the cardboard, but not through the carpet. I placed blue painter's tape over the areas where the screw holes would be, and then from the inside of the door panel, I pushed through the hole with an awl, which punctured the tape, and then I knew exactly where the screw hole was. I then put the door panel back in place, pushed my awl through the screw hole, and scratched the door where I needed to drill new screw holes. Once the new screw holes were drilled, I then test fit the door panel. Next, it was time to drill the holes for the armrest screws, and I used the same method. I put 3 armrest screws in the door, put yellow paint on them, put the door in place, and then transferred the paint onto the door panel. I then drilled the holes in the backing board the size, the diameter of the armrest screws, but I did not go through the fabric. Once the holes were drilled, I then took my awl and pushed the awl through the fabric, then turned the panel over so the finished side was facing up, and then I took a razor blade and I cut an X pattern where the screw holes were. Next, I cut the window crank opening so that the window crank washer fit correctly. And only cut the hole big enough so the extruded part of the window crank washer fits in the hole. Cutting the hole this size will ensure that the spring that you install on the back side won't come through the hole. I moved the reflectors off the bottom of the door panel from the old door panels to the new door panels. And you can see where I marked it. I put it back in the exact same spot it was in the other door panel. I repainted the ribs on the reflector where the paint had rubbed off. I also reused the S emblems from the old door panels. I was careful when I removed the tabs off the back of the emblem that I didn't damage the tab because I ended up reusing those. And I made a template off the old panel, transferred the template to the new panel, and then I used my awl and I just pushed through the fabric and the backing board. On the driver's door, I made another template to cut the hole for the remote mirror. Then just simply tape the template in place and cut through. Well, that's it for the prep work. The door panel's now ready for installation. Before we do that, we got to put the water shields in place. Now that we're intimately familiar with our door panels, it only takes a few minutes to install them permanently. The process for the rear panels is exactly the same as the door panels. We're going to use all the same methods, and It's just a different shape panel. And here I'm transferring the location to drill the hole for the mounting screw. When drilling the hole, don't drill all the way through the fabric. Just drill through the fiberglass and use your awl to punch a hole through the fabric. The rear panels can't be installed without installing new windlace. So I got some new windlace from Fusic, and it's actually very nice. Yeah, I think this windlace is actually better than the factory parts, and that's not something we can say very often. I had to trim the carpet a little bit to fit the windlace, and then once the windlace is in place, we can permanently install our panel. Well, my rear armrests were nasty. There's just no way I was reusing them. And I have a thing with ashtrays. I don't like ashtrays, so those things had to go as well. So I had to do something kind of semi-custom for the rear armrests. I took an angle grinder and cut off the rivets that held the ashtray in place. I peeled off the fabric and then peeled off the jute underneath it. And they're pretty rusty. I gave the armrest frames a couple coats of Evapo-Rust gel, and then in the morning rinsed them off, and I went from there. I sprayed the armrest frames with some black Rust-Oleum paint to try to create a good working surface. I'd never worked with expanded PVC, and I wanted to try it. I thought this was a good place to try to use it. The armrest frame has a flange around the edges, and so whatever goes over the top of the armrest frame has to be at least a 1/4 inch thick. And so I ordered 6 sheets, 12 inches by 12 inches by 1/4 inch thick of expanded PVC. I used a heat gun that I had to heat up the expanded PVC sheet and shape it. I cut a bunch of slots in the top of the sheet because I was concerned about being able to shape it around a compound curve. I glued the expanded PVC sheets into place with contact cement. I let the contact cement set up overnight, and then the next day I started shaping it. Once I had the sides roughed in, I then added the top, and again glued it in place with contact cement. One thing about 1/4 inch expanded PVC is it allowed me to cover up the ashtray hole without having to weld the hole shut. I used some lightweight spackling left over from a home project and filled in the cracks and the gaps and then sanded it to shape. Once I had the armrest shaped, it was time to add the vinyl cover. And I used contact cement again, and I only applied the contact cement around the outside edges, thinking that would allow the vinyl to float a little bit. I had some difficulty wrapping the vinyl around that compound curve up front, and I got a few light wrinkles, but I think those will come out over time. With my rear armrest done, I can now permanently attach those. And that's it. That does it for the door panel install. It's not an overly difficult job. I think anyone can do it. You just want to take your time and think through what you're doing, and I think you'll do just fine.